Yes, boys. So today I want to share with you the reality of what it's like actually running a six-figure tech agency and the lessons that I've learned along this journey and what is going to help me scale this agency to seven figures. Because the reality is, running a business will humble you in ways you don't expect. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Amaechi. I run a crypto development agency and consultancy called DecentralHub. So we specialize in building the infrastructure and the applications for several blockchain projects, including smart contracts, security audits, full product builds, ecosystem development, and developer workshops. So right now we're working with several different clients in the industry across many different verticals. And what I want to do is I want to talk to you guys today about some of the things that I've learned while running this agency. Because when I started, I thought I understood what business was, and I definitely did not. You know, the common mistake that people make at the beginning of their business journey is that they think it's about being good at what you do, being skilled, working hard. And yes, those things do matter, but it's not the full picture. It's nowhere near the full picture at all. I started off as a freelancer in this space, and when I first started taking on client work, obviously I was doing everything myself. So every line of code, every client call, every proposal, every follow-up email, every invoice, literally everything completely by myself. And that's definitely something that I can be proud of myself for, because it shows that I was dedicated and I was able to take complete ownership of everything that I was, tasked to deliver. But what I didn't realize is that at that time, and for a long period of time, I was actually confusing being busy with making progress, because there's a difference between filling up your calendar. I was filling up my calendar, I was staying up late, I was grinding, but what you don't realize is that that isn't actually what's going to help your business grow. And this is a common mistake that every beginner freelancer makes, right? But they don't understand how to go from just being a solopreneur, like a solopreneur, a freelancer, to then actually turning that into a business. So the business at that stage wasn't growing, and I was grinding, I was staying up late, I was doing all these hours, but at the end of the day, it was just me running faster and faster and faster and faster on a treadmill. Like, visualize it like that, right? You're just on a treadmill, and your only option is to keep increasing that speed, right? You're gonna get to a certain point where you're not going to be able to increase that speed anymore, and you're going to be the bottleneck, And like I said, this is a trap that a lot of people fall into, especially people who have a skill and have taken time out of their life to learn a skill and become good at what they do. Because when you're good at something, it feels productive to just keep doing it. You're working and it feels like you're making progress. But there's a difference between actually having motion and making progress, Motion is what I call activity, whereas progress is results. So a lot of people have motion, yes, they're doing a lot, they're, working a lot, but are they actually getting the results that they need to be getting? And a lot of you can have one without the other. And this is something that I personally learned the hard way. And I made a video on TikTok. Moving to Dubai at 22 almost broke me. That actually got a decent amount of views. It got about 50,000 views. The purpose of that video, and one of the biggest catalysts that led to me making that video, was the whole fact that I was actually literally going through this, right? I was literally running myself into the ground. I moved to Dubai, I was young, and I was still freelancing also while working for my company, and I was just doing everything, and I was working 19, 20 hours a day, non-stop working, and I literally ran myself into the ground. And it got to the point where I couldn't really even balance my client work with my actual job that I was doing, my remote job. And when I say in the hook, moving to Dubai almost broke me, that's what I was basically describing, because I completely ran myself into the ground and I started neglecting several other areas of my life just to be able to continue to fulfill. And it gets to a point where it's like, the fulfillment wasn't just sustainable anymore for me. So one of the first real shifts that I had was understanding delegation. And this is actually something that I resisted for a long time, because in my head, I always thought that if I handed off some work to somebody else, it would come back wrong and I'd have to fix it anyway, so there was no point, so like, why bother? But what I didn't understand is that delegation is not about finding someone who does it exactly like you. So I don't need someone to do the work exactly how I do it. It's about freeing up my time to do things that only I can do, right? So if I have to deliver on a project and I have to write a certain piece of code or implement a feature, yes, I might do it in my way, but that doesn't mean that someone else's way won't lead to the same result. So if I'm not the only person that can do a specific piece of work, then that basically means that I don't really need to be doing it, and I can actually delegate that off to someone else. So over time, what I started doing is started delegating a lot of my work, hiring developers, and specifically hiring developers out of my community that I trained. So I had that kind of reassurance that someone was able to implement and deliver in the way that I wanted to, but also realizing that because I was not the person who needed to do the task, and these other developers that I've trained are now capable of doing the task that I want them to do, I can actually free up my time and give them work, pay them as well, give them experience, and allow me to focus on more important tasks that only I can do. And you see, the difference is that when I was writing every line of code, I wasn't talking to new clients, I wasn't building relationships, and I wasn't thinking strategically about where the business should go. Instead, I was just stuck in execution mode. And I'm not gonna lie, like the first time that I brought another developer onto a project, it did feel uncomfortable, You have that kind of urge to check on their work, you might wanna micromanage, and I probably annoyed them. But over time, this is something that shifted. And I personally feel like I was quite fortunate, right? Because one of the first people that I ever worked with was Jacob, who's someone that I've spoken about before. And the good thing about working with Jacob is that he actually helped me feel more comfortable in terms of delegating work to other people, because his work was at a very high standard, and he's someone that I worked with for a long period of time, training him up and teaching him about the blockchain industry. So I had a lot of trust in him, and that was my first ever experience in delegation. And now Jacob is someone who is also managing part of my program and teaching every single developer that comes in. So that's one way that I've managed to delegate that work, so that people can get trained in my exact way through someone who's also been through that. And also Jacob manages and works on all of my projects, and he manages and leads them, so he helps me a lot in that regard. Once you get into the habit of delegation, over time your mindset shifts, because you realize that an hour spent of my time closing a new client, for example, is worth way more than it is writing code that somebody else could have written. And it's not because I'm better than them, but when you're running a business, you have to understand the role. And I realized that my role in the business had to change if the business was going to grow. So delegation is not just an excuse to be lazy. It's about understanding leverage. It's about multiplying your output by putting the right people in the right positions. And this is not something that anyone's really going to teach you in business or in life in general. And once I understood that, that's when the agency started to grow in a way that it never would have been able to if I was still doing everything myself. The second thing that I learned is how powerful systems are. So when it was just me, I didn't really need a system of how to work, right? Because everything just lived in my head. I knew what I needed to do. I knew what needed to happen, and I didn't really need to write anything out. I just knew the process. But the moment you bring on other people, that whole workflow falls completely apart. Because now you have someone asking how to do something, and then you explain it, but an explanation is not enough for some people. They might ask in a week later and you explain it again, and then maybe someone else new joins in and you have to explain the same thing a third time, and then you end up in this cycle where you're just constantly repeating yourself and spending half of your time explaining the same things over and over. And at that point is when I realized that I needed SOPs, standard operating procedures. And what actually made me realize this even more is that I met up with one of my friends earlier, well, now it's 2026, but beginning of 2025, so about a year ago. One of my friends who's running a property business, he actually introduced me to this concept of SOPs and how it actually helps him scale, right? Because it's just a process of systemizing literally everything that you do, so that you can now onboard new people have them follow an exact procedure, but also it helps you as a business owner, as a founder, to know exactly what every single person should be doing. So then that's what I started doing, you know, basically creating written documentation about how we do things. And it definitely did feel tedious at first, because it felt like I was just doing work for the sake of being busy. And especially as a technical person, you want to be building, not writing documents, you know. But over time, this is what happened. You know, once I had the SOPs in place for onboarding new clients, for my developers, how they're going to do their work, for so many different things within my business now, I didn't actually need to explain things anymore. So now I had a system where new people could onboard themselves. Quality of the work became more consistent because everyone was just basically following the same process. And this just helps me buy back hours of my week. And as a business owner, this is something that is incredibly important, because when you're running a business, you understand that time is your most important asset. That is basically why you're running the business, right? You're running a system so that you can buy back your time. So by implementing these SOPs, I was getting back hours of my week. And systems is essentially what allows the business to run without me or you being involved in every single decision. So again, this is what is turning someone who's just a freelancer into an actual business and an actual company. If you're doing the same thing more than twice, realistically it should be documented. And that's one of the rules that I follow now. All right, so the third deal is something that personally for me, it took me a lot longer to learn. And it was just all about how to actually structure my deals. Because I grew up in an environment, I think, that, you know, was a factor to this, right? You know, for me, making money it's just at the forefront of my mind. Right? I just want to make money, and the only concept of making money that I had was collecting cash, collecting payments. So not like literally physical cash, but as in getting paid a certain dollar amount for a certain piece of work, right? And especially as a freelancer, it's the same thing. You know, you're a freelancer, you get paid for a set amount of work, you collect a retainer up front, you deliver the work, you get paid the full balance. So in my head, that was the only concept that I understood of making money. Just getting cash in for doing every project, and then just cycling through clients or getting retainers and ongoing work from clients. So when I started, I'd have a project, client comes in, we scope the project, they pay me the fee, deliver the project, and then move on to the next one, or keep working with the client on the next bit of work, whatever, right? Collecting cash, that's all I knew in my head. Now, of course, that works, and you can definitely make serious money with that, but there's still limitations and problems with it, because unless you have a constant retainer of clients, you have one or two clients that are constantly working with you, what you're going to have is essentially just starting from zero every single time. Once you finish a project, the revenue stops, the money stops coming in, the cash stops coming in. And then you have to find a way to close the next client, or acquire the next client, or get another one of your old clients on board for more work or something like that, right? And you're just in this constant cycle of closing the next deal and the next deal and the next deal and the next deal without anything to kind of keep you running in between those deals, right? And what I realized is that to scale and how businesses actually operate and how successful agencies actually operate is that they don't operate in that way. They build recurring relationships. So like I said, one of the ways that you can maintain that is to actually have clients that you work with over an extended period of time. So it's not just one-time projects, it's actually over time extended work. You can get retainers, and then you can also get revenue share agreements, and then even scaling up to where we are now, you know, taking ownership stakes. So the idea of this is that instead of just thinking about getting paid once to build one specific project, I started structuring the deals that we're working on in a way where we constantly had ongoing involvement. And, you know, it can look different based on the type of projects. Maybe it's project maintenance. Maybe it is taking a percentage of the revenue. Maybe it's getting equity in the project. But this completely changes the way you make money in your company now. Because now, instead of trading time for money on every single project, and that's not just my time, by the way, because, for example, think of what I've just already explained. So I already bought back some time by offloading work to my developers, but then there's a certain amount of scale that I can get to, because maybe for every new project I need more developers, right? And let's say I had 10 projects in one go, what do I need? 10 different batches of developers, or do I need developers working on multiple projects at the same time? It becomes less scalable, right? So now when you implement these recurring kind of models, what it means is that now I can also buy back the time of my developers as well, which overall buys everyone more time, right? So this whole concept of buying back time is what kind of fuels scaling, right? So now instead of trading time for money on every single project, we're basically building assets within the company. So every project that we take on within the company basically becomes an asset for us, whether it's generating revenue, taking equity, or just being a long-term ongoing retainer. So now what we're doing is basically creating income streams that continue even when myself or my devs or whoever is not actively working on that specific project. And that is one of the best decisions that I made in terms of shifting from purely project-based pricing to incorporating ownership and revenue share into certain deals. So now it actually helps me to think about scaling, and actually helps me in my decision-making process about the kind of projects that I take on. Because, just because a project is giving me a lot of cash up front, is that the best decision to make in that moment? Sometimes it's not always the best decision to make. And now I'm actually thinking about projects that are going to give me more compounding upside, so that I can continue to get paid in the long run, and I can increase the asset base that we have within our company. At the end of the day, ownership beats an hourly rate, right? So recurring payments beats a one-off payment. Assets beats invoices and having to constantly churn through invoices. And especially when you're running this kind of service business, you need to think about how to restructure your deal so that you can continue to build long-term value instead of just chasing short-term cash. So the last thing that I want to talk about actually ties all of these concepts that I've just broken down to you together, and this is something that I want to highlight for you, especially as we just started 2026, and I want you guys to take this lesson very, very seriously, right? Most people confuse being busy with being productive. And I did say this earlier, but it's so important, I want to come back to it, because it's the underlying mistake behind everything that I've just broken down. You see, when you're busy, you feel like you're working, you feel like you're making progress. You go to bed tired and you think, wow, I've done a lot today. But if you actually zoom out, a month goes by, 3 months goes by, 6 months goes by, and you look at where you were before, maybe 6 months ago, and where you are now, you haven't really moved the needle that much. So that's actually the trap that most people fall into, because being busy is easy. Being busy satisfies your ego. You feel like you're working hard. You fill up your day with tasks, emails, calls, small little unimportant tasks that just, make you feel like you're being productive, and you're constantly in motion, constantly, feeling productive without actually moving the needle on anything that's important. Whereas real productivity is different. Real productivity is asking yourself, what are the 2 or 3 things that I can do today that are going to move the needle? What are the 2 or 3 things that I can do today that actually matter right now? What are some high leverage activities that are going to push my business forward? And then it's about protecting your time so that you can deliver on those things. For me, that meant accepting that I can't do everything. As much as I wanted to, I can't do everything. There's some things that will be done worse than I would do them, maybe. There's some emails or some messages that might not get responded to immediately. And there's some tasks that might just fall through the cracks and not get done because they're just not relevant or important enough at that time. But the trade-off is worth it, because it means that the things that actually matter get done every single time. And these things are buying back my time. The strategic work gets done, the relationship building gets done, the deals get closed. And as a business owner and as a founder, you have to be willing to let go of some things and let some things be imperfect you have to be willing to let go of some things and let some things be imperfect so that the important things can be excellent. Running an agency has taught me more about business than any course or any book or any university degree ever could. Because as an entrepreneur, you learn by going through the horses. You learn through the friction, through the challenges, through the failures, the mistakes, the moments where something breaks and you have to figure out why. The key things that I took away, and I want you guys to take away from this journey so far, is that delegation is, think of delegation like a multiplier. It multiplies the force that you have to deliver on results and get certain outputs. Systems is what's going to help you scale. It's what's even going to allow you to scale. There's no scaling without systems. Ownership is important because in this context, especially as a service-based business, you're trading time for money. And ownership means that you don't have to trade time for money anymore. And being busy is not the same as making progress. So if you're building something right now, whether it's an agency, whether it's a product, whether you're thinking about freelancing, maybe you're just working in general, you're working your job and you want to understand how to get to the higher levels within your job. All these things that I've described are still completely relevant. Whatever it is, just think about which one of these lessons apply to where you are and where you're currently stuck at. And you might not have even realized that you're stuck, and maybe watching this video help you realize that you're actually stuck. Because usually what we've realized is that the bottleneck isn't that you need to work harder. You've already got to this point because you work hard. The bottleneck is that you need to change the way you're working and just maybe work a bit differently. So if you guys did enjoy this video and did get some valuable insights of me breaking down, what it's like scaling my agency. 2025, we've just done multiple six figures as DecentralHub, and we're looking to scale to the millions. And I just want to share that journey with you guys about how we're actually going to get there. So if you guys did enjoy this video, please definitely leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, share the video with someone who might find this helpful. And just tune into my up and coming videos, guys. And also, guys, if you want to work with me one-to-one on my client projects and be part of my agency and also get the training that you need so that you can find high-paying crypto jobs and high-paying crypto clients, as well as working with my clients, then click the link in the bio, fill out the very short form. It only takes about 2 minutes, and then if you're the right fit, we can work to get you on board and you can start working together with myself. But yeah, guys, that's all I have for today. I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.